Good day everyone, I am Janelle Balanag Barroso and today we are going to talk about historical antecedents of science and technology. So this section will tackle on how social contexts shape and were shaped by science and technology across three historical periods. As you can see, technology is developing at a very fast rate. The latest gadget today is tomorrow's antique. As a result of this rapid development of technology, we often take things for granted. So today we are going to introduce the historical antecedents of science and technology and discuss the antecedents during the ancient period, Middle Ages, and modern ages. A discussion on how important Philippine inventions and innovations will also be discussed in this section. First, let us briefly explain these two important topics. First one, history of science and technology. So basically, the history of science and technology focuses on how science and technology have changed across time and the impacts of science and technological innovations on the prevailing social, cultural, political, and economic context throughout history. Conversely, it also pays attention to the conditions that shape science and technology. The other one is the historical antecedents. An antecedent, by definition, is a precursor to the unfolding or existence of something. Thus, historical antecedents in science and technology are factors that pave the way for the presence of advanced and sophisticated scientific and technological innovations today. So we are done with the introduction. Now we are going to talk about the ancient period. The rise of ancient civilizations paved the way for advances in science and technology. These advances during the ancient period allowed civilizations to flourish by finding better ways of communication, transportation, self-organization, and living in general. One antecedent of science and technology during the ancient period is the ancient wheel. People from ancient civilizations used animals for transportation long before the invention of the wheel. No one knows exactly who invented the wheel and when. There is, however, a general agreement that the ancient wheel grew out of a mechanical device invented by the Sumerians after 3500 BC, called the potter's wheel. It is a heavy flat disc made of hardened clay which was spun horizontally on an axis. The Sumerian's wheel was later developed for domestic use, such as irrigation and milling purposes. 1,000 to 1,500 years later, the wheel was first used on carts and horse carriages for transportation of goods. Until this day, the invention of wheel had played a significant role in transportation as it was used for adaptation to invent more efficient modes of transportation such as cars. Another antecedent during the ancient period is the paper. Roughly around 3000 BC, the ancient Egyptians began writing on papyrus, a material similar to thick paper. Papyrus is made from the pith of the papyrus plant called Cyperus papyrus. It is lightweight, strong, durable, and most importantly, portable. Before the Egyptians invented the papyrus, writing was done on stone. Because of the difficulty of writing on stone, writing was reserved only for very important occasions. With the advent of the papyrus, documentation and record-keeping became efficient, widespread, and vast. Through its use, information dissemination became exponentially faster. Records were kept and stood the test of time. Another antecedent during the ancient period is the shadoof, also known as ancient shadoof. It is an early tool invented and used by ancient Egyptians to irrigate their lands. Among Egyptians who lived near the Nile River, irrigation was necessary to water their crops. The shadoof is a hand tool or a hand-operated device used for lifting water. Its invention introduced the idea of lifting things using counterweights. Because of this invention, irrigation and farming became much more efficient. The shadoof is also believed to be an ancient precursor of the more sophisticated irrigation tools. Another antecedent is the Antikythera mechanism. Even before the invention of the antecedents of modern computers, the Greeks had already invented the ancient world's analog computer orrery, discovered in 1902 and retrieved from the waters of Antikythera, Greece. The Antikythera mechanism is similar to a mantle clock. Upon its discovery, the bits of wood seen on its fragments suggest that it must have been housed in a wooden case. It is akin to a clock in the way that the case has a circular face and rotating hands. A knob on the side makes it possible for it to be wound forward and backward. As this knob moves forward and backward, its mechanism allows it to display celestial time. Thus, it is widely believed that the Antikythera mechanism was used to predict astronomical positions and eclipses for calendar and astrological purposes. It is believed that the Antikythera mechanism, which is one of the oldest known antecedents of modern clockwork, was invented by the Greek scientists between 150 to 100 BC. Another antecedent of science and technology during the ancient period is the alupile, also known as the hero's engine. The alupile is widely believed to be an ancient precursor of the steam engine. Hero, or Heron of Alexandria, is credited to the demonstration of the use of the alupile during the 1st century AD. The alupile is a steam-powered turbine which spun when the water container at its center was heated, thus making it practically the first rudimentary steam engine. It is not clear whether the alupile served any practical purpose, but it is believed to be one of the many temple wonders at that time. Nonetheless, Vitruvius, a Roman author, architect, and a civil engineer, described the alupile as a scientific invention through which the mighty and wonderful laws of the heavens and the nature of Venus may be understood and judged.
So good day everyone, I am Carmela Azel Bernardo and I am reporting the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages, the period of time beginning about 500 AD and extending for about 1000 years is called the Middle Ages. Period in history between the breakup of Roman Empire and the rise of modern times. About 1000 years, 580 to 1500 AD. The Middle Ages refers to a time in European history from 400 to 1500 AD. It occurred between the fall of Roman Empire and the Renaissance. During the Renaissance, scholars and thinkers began to call preceding era as the Middle Ages, as it separated culture of an ancient Rome and Greece and the Renaissance. In the history of Europe, the Middle Ages of medieval period lasted from 5th to the late 15th century. It began with the fall of Western Roman Empire and transition into the Renaissance in the Age of Discovery. The period of European history extending from about 500 to 1400 to 1500 CE is traditionally known as the Middle Ages. The term was first used by 15th century scholars to designate the period between their own time and the fall of Western Roman Empire. So here are the inventions in the Middle Ages. First one is heavy plow. A plow or plow is a farm tool for loosening or turning the soil before sowing seed and planting. The heavy iron mold bar plow was developed in China's Han Empire in 1st and 2nd century. The world changed when the plow that could plow deep and turn over heavy clay soil was invented in the Middle Ages. The invention of the heavy plow made it possible to harness areas with clay soil, and clay soil was more fertile than the lighter soil types. In 1962, Lynn White Jr. argued against the Marxists that the primary explanation for economic and demographic boom around AD 1000 was the introduction of a proper mold bar plow. As opposed to the traditional and ancient art, the plow with its mold bar, share, and coulter was able to cut through the clay soils of northern and the central Europe. Thus, the introduction of plow, according to White, made an extensive cultivation of northern and the western wilderness possible. Further, in terms of the size of the crop, the plow, in the contrast to the ard, not only turns the soil and buries the weed, it also brings the lower soil where the nutrients have been trapped to the surface. Next one is mechanical clock. The mechanical clock, which derived from water clock, was born in medieval Europe. The first mechanical clocks were large devices made of iron. This innovation made it possible to produce ever smaller clocks. The mechanical clock is invented by Huygens in 1657. Invention increased the accuracy of mechanical clocks more than 60 folds. As William J. H., many historians influenced contemporary culture have explained the origin of the mechanical clock through the assumed birth of a new necessity of time consciousness in 13th and 14th century in Europe. Werner Sompart and Lewis Mumford, for example, found this necessity origin in a strictly organized monastic life. Mumford asserted that the monastery was natural context for the inventions of the mechanical. Second one is gunpowder. Gunpowder was invented in 9th century China as one of the four great inventions, and spread throughout most part of Eurasia by the end of 13th century. Gunpowder was invented by the Chinese. Gunpowder is the one of the most important inventions that was created during Middle Ages. Gunpowder was the first chemical explosive invented, and it was created in 9th century by the Chinese. It is mixture of sulfur, charcoal, and potassium nitrate, with the sulfur and charcoal acting as fuels. The first device identified as a gun, a bamboo tube that used gunpowder to fire a spear, appeared in China around AD 1000. The Chinese had previously invented gunpowder in 9th century, 904 AD. Gunpowder was invented in 9th century in China as one of the four great inventions and spread throughout most part of Eurasia by the end of 13th century. Gunpowder is originally developed by the Taoists for medicinal purposes. Gunpowder was first used for warfare around 904 AD. Third one is paper money. Paper money is an invention of the Song dynasty in China in 11th century, nearly 20 centuries after the earliest known use of metal coins. While paper money was certainly easier to carry in large amounts, using paper money had its risks, counterfeiting and inflation. Paper money in 1690. Paper money in United States dates back to 1690 and represented bills of credit or IOUs. New currencies were introduced in the US in 1861 to help finance the Civil War. In 1996, a series of bills were introduced that the use of methods to prevent counterfeiting. The common coin throughout the Middle Ages was the small silver penny or denarius. During that period, there was also the pound, which was 20 skillings, and a skillings, which was 12 pence. The 13th century introduced a larger silver penny known as the groat, which means big. Last one is spinning wheel. The spinning wheel was probably invented in India. Though its origin are obscure, it reached Europe via in the Middle East and the European Middle Ages. The first stage in mechanizing the process was to mount the spindle horizontally in bearings so that it could be rotated by a cord encircling a large, hand-driven wheel. Wayne Smith and J. Tom Cothran. The spinning wheel was invented in India as early as 500 to 1500 AD. According to Arnold Pacey, a spinning wheel was most likely invented in the Islamic world by the early 11th century. 14th century invented in the 14th century to spin wool into yarn. The great wheel was also known as walking wheel as it operated while standing. So, how to use a spinning wheel? A spinning wheel early machine for turning fiber into thread or a yarn, which was woven into cloth on a loom. The distaff carrying the mass of fiber was held in the left hand and the wheel is slowly turned with the right, holding the fiber and the angle to a spindle produce the necessary twist. So we are done reporting the Middle Ages. So next is Rihanna Joy Bravo.
So good morning everyone. Now we tackle is all about the modern ages. So in modern ages, in historical period, efficiency people realized the importance of the efficiency of transportation, communication, and production. In this industrialization took place, but of course, the industrialization there are greater risks on human health, food safety, and of course the start of where the damaging of our environment because of implementation sick. So Anyways, now we tackle about the antecedents in the modern ages and some of the most important innovation in the modern ages. One of them is the compound microscope, or we also call a microscope. And about 1590, there are two Dutch spectacle maker, the Zacharias Janssen and the Hans. They began experimenting with lenses, putting together to several lenses on a tube. It was capable of magnifying objects in 3 times, for their sizes when fully closed and up to 10 times it's extended to the maximum. So compound microscope is one of the important instrument in many scientific studies, such as in the area of medicine, forensic studies, tissue analysis, atomic studies, and genetics. And next is the telescope. Telescope is introduced by the great Italian scientist Galileo Galilei. The first man used telescope. And with this telescope, he was able to look at the moon, and he discovered the 4 satellites of Jupiter, observed a supernova, verified the phases of Venus, and discovered sunspots. And next is the Jacquard loom. He was considered as one of the most critical drivers in revolution. Built by French weaver Joseph Marie Jacquard, the Jacquard loom simplifies textile manufacturing. Prior to the invention of the Jacquard loom, a drew loom was used which required 2 individuals to operate, the weaver and a drew boy. And Jacquard loom is not a new loom type. Was an attachment to a standard loom that sat on top of a loom. So the last is the television. The Scottish engineer John Baird, credited for the invention of modern television. And Baird is the best remembered for inventing a mechanical television system. And the television pioneer credited televised objects in outline in 1924, recognizable human faces in 1925, and moving objects in 1926, and projected colored images in 1928. And the last slide is the evolutions of television.
So, hello everyone, I am Angelica Bacani and I'm here to discuss the inventions by Filipino scientists. So, the Philippines boasts of its own history and tradition of specific and technological innovations. So, Filipinos are responsible for developing many scientific and technological innovations focused on navigation, traditional shipbuilding, textiles, food processing, indigenous arts and techniques, and even the cultural inventions. So, Filipinos are well known for creating things that are not present in our generation yet. Filipinos tend to be creative. We used to create things that are new in our environment and in our society. Okay, now we're going to talk about the most important inventions by Filipino scientists. So first is the electronic jeepney, which is also called as e-jeepney. So it is the most recognizable national symbol of the Philippines. We have these different national symbols, just like the national flower, which is the sampaguita. We also have the national animal, which is the kalabaw. And here, jeepneys are the most recognizable national symbol of our country, Philippines. And one thing more is that it is the most popular mode of public transportation in the country. We always use to ride at the jeepneys for us to get to our destinations. Jeepneys are designed and improvised from scratch out of military jeeps that the Americans left in the country after World War II. And then it was first introduced in Metro Manila and Bacolod City. And then e-jeepneys are designed to be environment friendly because it doesn't use gas. It was running because of the electricity, and then it eliminates noise and air pollution uh, since it doesn't use gas, meaning it doesn't emit any poisonous gas. Jeepneys are also great because since it uses electricity, we all know that electricity is far cheaper than an ordinary diesel or a gas, and because of that, it allows the jeepney drivers to earn more profit. Next invention was made by an Ilonggo scientist, which is Abelardo Aguilar, and then he invented the erythromycin, which is an antibiotic out of a strain of a bacterium which is called Streptomyces erythraeus, where they derive the drug's name. And then Aguilar was not credited for this discovery by Eli Lidico, which is his employer, to whom he sent the strain for separation. So the US company eventually owned the merits for this discovery. Next invention is the medical incubator, which was invented by Mundo, and unlike Aguilar, Mundo was credited for her invention. So she was the first woman pediatrician to be admitted to the prestigious Harvard University School of Medicine. She was also the founder of the first pediatric hospital in the country, and then she also won the 1977 Ramon Magsaysay Award because of her service that spanned of a total of 8 decades. Her original improvised incubator consisted of 2 native laundry baskets of different sizes that are placed one inside the other, as you can see in the picture. So warmth is generated by bottles with hot water placed around the baskets, and then a makeshift hood over the baskets allows oxygen to circulate inside the incubator. Del Mundo's incubator was particularly outstanding as it addressed the state of Philippine rural communities that had no electricity to aid the regulation of body temperatures of newborn babies, since her incubator doesn't need electricity to run. So in year 2000, mole remover was invented by Rolando de la Cruz, and he was credited for this invention. His invention has the ability to easily remove the moles and warts on the skin without the need for any surgical procedure. And then amazingly, he made this through the use of the extracts of the cashew nuts, which is the Anacardium occidentale. Easily caught on for its accessibility, affordability, and painless and scarless procedure. So De La Cruz also won a gold medal for this invention in the International Invention, Innovation, Industrial Design, and Technology exhibition in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in year 2000. And lastly, the banana ketchup, which was invented by a Filipino food technologist, which is Maria Orosa. She was credited for this invention. Banana ketchup is a variety of ketchup different from the commonly known tomato ketchup. According to the historical accounts, Maria Orosa invented the banana ketchup at the backdrop of World War II when there was a huge shortage of tomatoes. Because of that, Orosa came up with the idea that why not use mashed banana, sugar, vinegar, and other spices to create a different variety of ketchup, which is the banana ketchup. Those ingredients that she used in creating the banana ketchup are the ones that are readily available at that time. So, Rosa's banana ketchup is brownish yellow in natural color, but they dyed it red. Why? Because they want to resemble the color of the most loved tomato ketchup. That's it for the historical antecedents of science and technology in different periods of time. during ancient period, Middle Ages, Modern Ages, and of course, the Filipino contributions and their inventions. Thank you for listening. God bless.